I'm Ram. As Aditi introduced me, I'm a professional photographer. Most of my work is in wedding photography. When Aditi got in touch with me about conducting this session, I understand the crux of the session is to talk about photography as a profession and my introduction into photography as a profession and so on and so forth. But I'd like to approach it in a slightly different way because photography for me was an intensely personal journey. It was also a way for me to confront many things I had going on in my life as well. So I can't disassociate the professional aspect of it from the personal aspect of it. So as you can see, this session is basically going to be about my photography journey, and the end point of that. There is no end point of that journey for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It's something I basically see myself doing till the very end of my life. So in as a part of that journey, I also turned into a professional photographer. Uh, but that's not the most important aspect of photography as an art form for me. The professional part of it is a business side of it, which I also thoroughly enjoy. But the artistic part of it and the social aspect of it and all the intangibles that I gained from being a photographer and being introduced and being a part of the art is what really appealed to me. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. And also, there's some quote unquote gyan in here about the things I've learned, which I did wrong along the way, and I did many things wrong. And you can see that from the introduction tagline. So if there's one reason you should listen to me, there are not many reasons, but if there is one reason you should listen to me, I've done pretty much everything wrong that I could have in learning photography as well as practicing it. So it was like a school of hard knocks for me for getting into photography, but I enjoyed every part of it. Moving ahead, this is more about hobbies, and this is basically how I learned photography. So the most important thing about learning photography is you have to ask yourself a few questions. It's not a rhetorical question. Why does photography appeal to you? What motivates you to pick up the skill? And why is photography important? And what stops you from learning photography yourself? So the third point is the most important point that I would like to address first. My background, besides being a commercial photographer, is I teach photography, and I've been teaching photography for over 15 years. I'm actually currently a member of staff in Ferguson College in Pune's photography department, which is one of the most well-reputed photography departments in India. And it's been around since 1975, I think. Time and again, I keep realizing one thing, that photography is actually quite simple. The technical aspects of it are quite simple. If you put your mind to it, you'll be able to learn it yourself. To give you an example, the photography department at Ferguson College, the criteria, the minimum requirement for you to actually get admission into the photography department, aside from a few tests which you have to take later, the minimum requirement is that you passed your 10th standard exam. So you cleared high school basically. So that's the level of basic physics and mathematics that you need to know, which is basically very minor. You don't need to know too much of it. The rest of it is all pretty simple, but it's all application based. So these are things which you have to learn yourself. The reason why I bring this up is there's a bit of a predatory nature to photography education, which you must be aware of, which is a lot of people will start pitching workshops to you, classes to you, that join our class, you learn photography, and so on and so forth. My counter to that is that it's easy enough for you to learn yourself. That is not the barrier to you getting better at photography. The barrier to you getting better at photography is not practicing enough, which is a problem that no one else can solve. It's a problem that you have to solve yourself. So this is an important aspect of learning photography. If you're interested in photography, just remember, if you want to get better at photography, there's only one solution. And that solution is you just have to go out and shoot. Every day that you shoot, you get better. I literally have my camera with me no matter where I am. In lockdown, we were locked down here for a month because my wife and I tested COVID positive. So we were locked down for a while. And even then, I was just shooting something I could find in the house. I'll link you guys to a very cool photographer friend of mine. His name is Arjun Menon. So during the first lockdown, what he did was he started shooting photos of action figures, and he made these very dramatic comic book fights with the action figures we had at home because he couldn't step out. And so you can do some really interesting thing, but the thing is you need to be inclined to keep practicing, and you should be able to answer that question for yourself about why you want to learn photography. So more than beyond why you should learn photography or why you should get interested in photography, there are many things that photography can do for you. So photography, and this is coming purely from a place of personal experience. So you have to take it from that place. This is my experience about what photography can do for you. It can give you a really unique perspective about the world. When you go out with a camera, when you go out with the aim of shooting a photograph, the way you think and the way you see the world changes. You will see it's almost as if the blinders get taken off your eyes. You start to notice things that you didn't see before when you were not when you weren't interested in photography, because photography is all about seeing. It's about noticing something which might be slightly out of place, or it might be taking something which is mundane and making something beautiful out of it. So, for example, this is a mountain range that I saw out of the window of an aircraft. Been passed by there many times. For some reason, it struck me that this looks like the spine of an enormous creature. So this photograph, I printed it, and it's called the spine of the earth. So it looks like it in my head, in my wild imagination. I just woken up from a jet lag sleep on a plane seat. I looked out and I saw this, and it didn't look this large. It looked pretty tiny. So I had to get my camera, I had to put a big zoom lens on it, and I took this photograph. So in my mind, it was almost like a living creature. I could see the history of the earth and almost see the earth as a living creature. So that's what I wanted to communicate. So it changes the way you see the world. Uh, it lets you interact and meet really interesting people. So there's a long story behind this gentleman. His name is Masterji in Himachal. So I have a print of his on my living room wall now. I met so many wonderful and interesting people in my travels just because of photography. When you have a camera in your hand, people either open up to you or they shun you. It doesn't matter, but there is a reaction of some kind. A lot of people, especially in India, are very friendly when you get a camera out, and they actually want to see what you shot. So he was very very friendly, and I got a great photo of him. This is I don't remember his name, unfortunately. He's a lighthouse keeper at the Alleppey Lighthouse in Kerala. So I actually wanted to take a photo where he was not looking at me, but as soon as I got my camera out, and it looks pretty intimidating, I had my serious camera. So as soon as I got it out, he started posing like this, and he looks like a movie star in this one. And I met some incredible people because of photography, and I'm sure you will do. The hobby tends to bring together many incredible people. So this is my very good friend Ben Gibson. We met at a wedding in Australia. He was a guest at the wedding. I was shooting the wedding, and he is a war photographer. He shot a lot of the wars and conflicts which happened in the 1990s and early 2000s. So he has the most incredible stories, and he's also one of the most humble and interesting people I've ever met. Anytime you meet him, there'll be some story which will make you go white and just imagine the insanity that he's seen. Photography has can also pull you out of your comfort zone. It can pull you out into doing things which you might not have done or been comfortable doing before, which I think is really important as a matter of personal growth as well. Uh, Before I got into photography, I used to be a recluse of sorts. I didn't like going out so much. I was very happy just sitting at home, working and playing on my computer. Uh, Picking up the camera actually expanded my world dramatically again. When I got the camera in my hand, I kept thinking, okay, where can I go to get a beautiful photograph? What can I do? What can I share with the world? What can I share about what I see about the world? So because I got into photography, I pushed myself to go to places and see places I hadn't been to before, which led to again many not very great incidents, but many beautiful ones as well. So I got to see things which I never imagined I would ever see in real life. So this is a photo of the aurora borealis from Alaska, the northern lights in Alaska. So I've seen things which many people have never seen in their lives. And I only went here to shoot photographs. If I wasn't into photography, I would never gone to this place. So this is a rainbow over San Francisco. This moment only lasted for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but I was there. I positioned myself there to be able to capture this and to share it. So this is just different places I've been. These photographs are just examples of how photography has basically pulled me out of my shell and made me inclined towards going to different places and doing different things. So the next part of this is what has photography specifically done for me? The previous part of it is what if you take photography on as a hobby, what it could do for you. So the main thing is for me is I as a young person, and I know all of you are very different from most of you be very different from how I was when I was much younger, when I was your age. I used to hate going out of my comfort zone. I used to be very happy being my nerdy self, being engrossed in my books, not doing anything adventurous. I had like a plan set. My parents had a plan for me, which was, beta, you will become an engineer. You'll earn lots of money being an engineer. You'll go to America. You'll do all those things. Right. So that was a plan that was set for me in motion. It was a very different time, I think, from the time that you guys are living in. For some reason, that didn't work for me. So for some reason, that's not what I decided to do for myself. I am an engineer. I worked as an engineer. I still have a I still really enjoy technology. I use it a lot, even in my photography work. Actually, it gives me a competitive advantage as well. I still do consulting work with technology, but I realized that being in a 9 to 5 engineering job was not my scene. It wasn't something that I saw myself doing until I was 60 and when I retired. So I had to take a jump at one point in time and decide that I'm going to do something a little risky and I'm going to do something on my own, which is photography. And it was a very tumultuous journey. I had to learn a lot of things and also had to embrace a lot of failures. But the one thing it did teach me is it made me pretty comfortable not doing what everyone else was doing and pretty comfortable taking a few risks along the way. Photography has let me explore that side of me, which was sort of nascent, which was sort of buried under a lot of societal pressure for a very long time. So it let me break out of it. I quit my job. I had a really nice job. I loved my colleagues, working with my colleagues and such, and it was a really good job. But I realized that I could not sit in front of a computer, working, coding day in, day out for the next year. I just couldn't do it. So at one point in time, I just quit. I left my job. I took my camera, and that time I was already shooting as a hobby. I took my camera, went off into the mountains, and this is a photo of me which my friend took after I quit my job. So I was just standing. This is a photo I shot standing on a hillside. This is in Himachal somewhere shooting stars. So that's what photography did for me personally. It allowed me to get out of a societal situation which I was not very happy with. It let me really embrace the idea of discomfort, that in order to see something beautiful, you might have to actually take quite a bit of pain for it. So this is a really good example of it. So this is one of the most beautiful sunsets I have ever seen. And this was shot in Alaska. One of the most, I wouldn't say it's the most inhospitable place on earth, but it's close to being one of the most inhospitable places on earth. It's inhospitable, it's scary, it's lonely, but it's extraordinarily beautiful. So the story behind this photo is that uh, my sister-in-law is also an avid traveler. So she lives and works in America. Whenever I go to America, we just take a car and we drive. We decide very late. We don't really make big plans. We're terrible at planning sometimes. So we just decide, hey, let's go to Alaska. So we decided, we took a flight down to Anchorage and we decided to just drive. I saw the sunset. I saw the sun coming down and I knew it was going to be a spectacular sunset. So I thought, let's wait. Let's wait for the sunset because you have to wait. You have to be patient to get a beautiful shot. So we just parked on the side. The car is on the right side of the frame. Obviously, you can't see it in this shot, but it was just there. Uh, the sun was going down. And the thing about a really cold place like Alaska is as soon as the sun starts to dip, it starts to get extremely cold extremely quickly. So the sun was starting to go below the horizon, and suddenly it was down to minus 25 and minus 26 degrees. And at one point in time, I was standing there outside with the tripod and I couldn't feel my thumbs. So I just could, I had no sensation in my hands anymore. And then I realized that I hadn't seen a car pass by this road in the last 4 hours while we were waiting. And then there was a moment of panic when I told my sister-in-law that if our car doesn't start, we're in deep trouble. So we should just leave. So there are many little incidents like that have happened, which I would never imagine doing for myself. So this is one of the shots, and this is the other shot I got from that same place. I don't know if it was it was definitely not worth the risk, but I think I got a couple of really nice shots out of it, really nice photographs out of it. So now we're getting to a few portraits which I shot. So coming back to what photography has done for me, and I don't know if it's true for you. Like I said, I think you guys have grown up in a very different time from when I've grown up. So I grew up not being very comfortable with social interaction. I was very introverted. I didn't like interacting with people. I was very awkward interacting with people. I couldn't go into a room and present to a bunch of people. It's a different thing that we're doing a Zoom call, but over the last year, I conducted workshops with over 100 people in the room. So I had to break through that barrier somehow. And the only way I knew how to do it is to head on, to confront it head on. So I took on the most socially fatiguing assignments I could, which are wedding photography. So you have to interact with people, you have to care about people, and portraiture, which is interacting with another human being on a fairly intimate level. So this is Raksha. So we decided to do a few portraits of Raksha in her sari, and I wanted to really show her personality. I wanted to show how my vision of how she looks and communicate her vision of how she looks as well. So this involves talking to a person, interacting with them, understanding what they think, how they feel, and being able to pose them, being able to communicate how they look on a photograph. I sort of broke through the introvertedness of my nature by actually doing this kind of work, forcing myself to do this kind of work. Now it's really easy. So now I have no problem interacting with people, talking to people. It's just a part of my job now. But I would not be able to recognize myself today from 15 years ago. No one would be able to recognize me. My friends wouldn't know that I'm the same person. And I credit most of that to photography because it's forced me to change certain things about how I behave just so I can get a photograph sometimes. This is stuff that I put together about if you want to become a photographer. See, by become a photographer, please remember, I'm not saying professional photographer. If you want to just, get good at being at photography, what do you need to know? You need to know some essential technical skills. You need to know things about aesthetics, and you need to have a particular mindset towards photography or towards learning. The technical stuff are basically what I have on the screen right now. Camera basics. It's camera controls, understanding lenses, their shooting practices, understanding exposure, all the fundamentals of photography. Now, there's too much of this for me to cover in this session, and it's impossible to cover in one session. So I'm just not going to do it. Other day we can definitely organize something later, maybe where I can talk about some photography basics to get people started. But I don't think this is the right time or place for it because it's just really information dense. Right? So there's also post processing, which is an essential skill, which is also something which has to be learned. And again, it's a very complicated thing. So it seems easy, but to do it properly is pretty complicated. So I literally have 8-week sessions where I talk to people about this stuff. This is the example I gave earlier. And understanding light, which is also another important aspect of photography. This is the stuff which I think in general is really important, and it's far more important than the technical stuff that I mentioned. The technical stuff is easy to understand, right? Most of you guys are somewhat well versed in basics of science. I don't know exactly, but like I said, if you pass 10th standard physics, mathematics, you know all you need to know to learn photography. You don't need to know more than that. So the technical stuff is pretty easy to learn. Everything else is hard. It's one of those things which is, I don't know how many of you play computer games, but there are games which are very easy to understand the controls of, but very hard to master. So how do you get better? The difference between a mediocre photographer, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, in a bell curve, almost everyone is average. Everyone above average is good. So that's how I look at it. The difference between a mediocre photographer and a good photographer are only these things. So the unwillingness to give up or quit in the face of harsh criticism from other people and even yourself. This is super important. I'm going to come back to this. Constantly challenging yourself to produce better work, super important. When someone asks me what my favorite photo is, I say that I hate all my photos. Right? I think every time I look back at my photos, I cringe. All the stuff I showed you now is very uncomfortable for me because my latest stuff, the stuff I'm working on now, I know is better than that. So I feel a little, I feel a little bit of discomfort showing that stuff because I know it's not as good as it could be. Knowing that talent without exceptional hard work is basically wasted. So you will be able to, any deficiencies you may have in talent, you can easily overcome with putting the extra work in, especially in something creative like photography. I know it sounds like uh, it sounds wrong to say that you can hard work your way out of talent, but it is generally true. No one thought that I had any talent for this, but I seem to be producing reasonably good work. And the last thing is really important, which is failing forwards. For creative stuff, whenever you create something, there's a very good chance that you will fail at what you tried to create. It's fine. It's a good thing because the only thing you need to remember is you need to understand why you did it wrong or how you did it wrong. And then the next time you do it, just do it a little better. And it has to be small incremental steps. Uh, photography in general is really easy. This is what I spoke about before. Most of the technical aspects are really simple. You just have to be persistent. You have to practice constantly and always just try to be a little better than you were before. And this next bit is super important. So there's a lot of negativity and misinformation from other photographers, and you should look out for these warning signs. So what happens with photography, right? Or what happens with any, I've seen this in many things. I've seen this in anything which is very easy to get reasonably good at. Um, there are some great communities, but there's some really toxic ones too, where the community is not very supportive. So you should be able to recognize whether a community is not very toxic. These are the warning signs that I can at least give you from my experience. So there are conversations where someone will go like, "You're not a photographer unless you shoot your camera in manual mode. You're not a photographer unless you edit your files. You're not a photographer unless you do this. You're not a photographer unless you do that." Ignore all that. It's all nonsense, right? You're a photographer the instant you decided to pick up a camera and shoot a photo that you liked, right? You became a photographer. Whether you're good or bad is a different conversation. But don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, right? Because you're not doing it the way they did it. So my professors would tell me that you should always shoot in manual mode. I know how to do it and I'm very competent at it. But in my professional career, I think I can count on my hands the times I've used manual mode because the kind of the way I shoot doesn't let me shoot that way. The other thing is dogma repeated without justification or support. So um, someone will say that, "Hey, this photo of yours sucks. It's terrible." That's fine. That's happened to me many times. I accept that. Why is it bad? Please tell me why it's bad so I can figure out a way to improve that photo. If I cannot get that information from you, whatever you said is meaningless to me, right? So please be very careful when you're talk when you engage with people and they give you feedback. Feedback always needs to be constructive. Feedback doesn't mean that your photo, if you ask me for feedback on a photo, I'm not going to say your photo is good, and I'm not going to lie to you and say your photo is good. If you show me a photo, I will very honestly tell you that it's not good or if it's good. And if I do tell you that, I will tell you why it's not good. That's the most important thing you can do for someone. If you have your friends with you, so this is the best thing you can do when you want to learn photography. Get into a community of other photographers who are supportive of each other. Supportive does not mean positive all the time. Supportive doesn't mean you always say it's amazing. Supportive means saying that, "Hey, this photo is bad." That doesn't mean I'm saying you're a bad person or anything of that sort. I'm saying that you could have done better, and this is why I think it's bad. Right. So this is really important. You need to find communities that are supportive to your growth as an artist. And this is tied up to the last point, which is poor feedback. So look out for these things. And if you're trying to get better at photography, find a community like this. So where do you learn about photography? So online learning is like a fire hose. So when you go online and read something about photography, it's very tricky to get the information that you need. Everyone online is an expert, whether they are or they aren't. The internet is like just a mass of information. So if you want to learn photography, there are a few good online resources written by old school photographers about the basics of photography. The great photography books that you can read. If you're truly interested, I'm happy to put links on the Discord channel, and then and I can tell you that, hey, read this article. This will explain all the basics of photography to you. You don't need me to conduct a workshop for it. All of you guys are smart, competent people. Just read what I send you, give it a good try, and I guarantee you that if you put in a little bit of effort, you will understand the basics of photography. The dangerous thing is, let me give an example of what is dangerous about the online communities. So YouTube, everyone's got their favorite YouTuber. So I'll give you examples. There's like Potato Jet, was Peter McKinnon. All these guys are great content creators. But remember what's happening when you look at a YouTube video. The job of the YouTube content creator is twofold, right? They want to make great content for you. They also want to earn money from it for themselves. Sometimes those two goals don't work together. They actually fight each other. Sometimes all you will see from a YouTube channel is a guy saying, "This is the best camera, buy this camera. This is the best lens, buy this lens." Right? That's all it'll be. You want to take photos like me, buy this camera. Now, why is that so dangerous? The first thing is you don't need that camera to take a great photo. The second thing is most of these people get YouTube, they get Amazon affiliate kickbacks for selling gear, right? So the incentive system is a little broken there. So you need to be careful about what you watch. You need to be careful about what you read. So it's very difficult to find like clean information which doesn't expect you to do anything. So YouTube, they expect you to feed the algorithm, always like and subscribe, right? So prefer to find sources which don't do that for you, right? So the great online communities, the great online resources, which is just basically text. You read them like a textbook. They don't expect you to like and subscribe to anything. Read it, process that information, go out and shoot and practice, and that's it. And then you're done. You learn most of the basics that way. That's why it's very tricky to find good information online these days. So this is just some screenshots of all the resources I found online just by looking for 5 minutes. This is too much information. And here's where I want to go back to feedback. So this is my favorite quote from a book I read very recently called Deep Learning from my favorite chess player of all time, named Gary Kasparov. He was like my idol when I used to play chess way back in high school. He was talking about, before you read the whole quote, he was talking about the context. The context of this is that as he got more and more successful in his chess career, it made him less and less able to change and reinvent himself and become better. Because now I can read the quote. Each success is like being dipped in bronze over and over again. Each success and each layer made me more and more rigid and unable to change or see the need for change. So what he's talking about here is every time he got positive feedback, it made him worse, right? Now, it made him worse because it reinforced and made him stuck. It got him stuck in particular behaviors, which made it difficult for him to change and reinvent himself in the game when he needed to. It stopped his progress. So, and this is one of the all-time best chess players in the world, right? He's saying that. So, why did I put this here? All of you know a community where anything you post on it, the only interaction you can have is a like, or someone will say something nice. And I'm talking about Instagram, right? Instagram does not have a dislike. Facebook does not have a dislike. Social media in general, they've removed the dislike or the ability to even say something is bad. So in Instagram, for example, no one will say your photo sucks. No one will say your photo is bad. Why? Because they're afraid you will say the same thing to them. So I hope I'm communicating why this is a bad thing. When someone says your photo, hey, your photo is great, lit, and all that, this is meaningless information. This information doesn't help you to grow. All this is telling you is, hey, my photo is amazing. I feel good. I feel great. It makes you feel good, but it doesn't make you get better. Right? So this is the danger of bad feedback. Bad feedback is like being dipped in bronze again and again. It makes you less able to get better. It makes you less able to change.